Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a company that completely changed how we shop. We're talking about Amazon, of course. And we're going right back to the very beginning to unpack the foundational strategy that took it from just an idea to the empire it is today.
It's a huge question, right? And you might think the answer is super complex, but a lot of the time it's actually simpler than you'd expect. For so many of these massive companies, it doesn't start with a ton of money or a huge team. It starts with one specific insight.
Yep, just one single, really smart observation. Someone sees the world changing in a way that other people don't. And in that change, they spot a huge opportunity. So to really get Amazon, you have to rewind. Let's go back to the early 1990s. The internet, well, it was basically the Wild West, a brand new frontier, and nobody was really sure what it was going to become.
Back then, it was a pretty niche thing, mostly for academics and computer geeks. The idea that you'd one day buy your groceries or your clothes on it, that seemed kind of crazy. But the real opportunity, it was right there, hiding in plain sight, just buried in the data. So Jeff Bezos, who was working at an investment firm at the time, stumbles upon this one key statistic. The internet was growing at 2,300% a year. Now, that isn't just growth, that's an explosion. And he realized right away that this kind of change was going to open the door for brand new ways of doing business.
Okay, so seeing a trend like that is one thing, but actually acting on it, that takes guts. And for Bezos, it meant he had a massive, life-changing decision to make. He was at this crossroads. He could stick with a secure path, a great, stable career at a major investment firm. Or he could take this huge risk on an unproven idea, all based on his belief in where the internet was heading. We all know what he chose. He bet on the future because he saw the chance to build something from the ground up. So, the decision was made. But now came the really tricky part, the strategy. How do you even begin to sell things in this brand new online world? The very first product you choose to sell could make or break the whole thing. And that really is the core strategic question, isn't it? If your ultimate goal is to sell everything, what do you sell first? You can't just launch with a million different things. You need to get your foot in the door. You need that one perfect product category to prove the concept and build from there. So, what was the perfect Trojan horse for e-commerce? Well, the answer was books. And this wasn't a random guess. It was a super calculated move. Why books? Well, first off, there are millions and millions of different titles out there. An online store could offer a selection that no brick-and-mortar shop could ever hope to match. And second, books are pretty standard, they're not fragile, and they're relatively easy to pack and ship. Right away, that gave them a huge sustainable advantage. All right, so the strategy is set. Start with books. Now it's all about execution. And let me tell you, the beginnings of this future empire, they were about as humble as it gets. We're talking 1994. Amazon didn't start in some shiny office tower. It started in a garage in Bellevue, Washington. The early days were just a tiny team, not a lot of money, and everyone literally packing up every single book by hand. So you have this contrast, right? The day-to-day reality was just a small team packing boxes in a garage. But the vision, even back then, was massive. It was to build a whole new way for the world to shop. And it's that huge gap between the humble start and the gigantic ambition that really powered the whole thing. So how do you get from that garage to a global system? What's the bridge? Well, it all comes down to one core, relentless principle that guided literally every single decision they made. And that principle was something they called customer obsession. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It means you don't start with your product or what your competition is up to. You start with the customer and you work backwards from what they need. The whole point was to build trust because they knew that in the long run, customer trust would be their single biggest asset. And what did that actually look like in practice? Well, it boiled down to three things: fast delivery, low prices, and a huge selection. And these weren't just catchy slogans for a commercial. They were the actual pillars the whole business was built on. Now, this is where we get to the really crucial part of the whole strategy. Because that bookstore, even as it started to get really successful, that was never the end game. It was just a stepping stone. Think about it. Every system they built to ship those books, every bit of trust they earned with each customer, it was all being put in place for something much, much bigger. The bookstore was simply phase one. It was the proof of concept. It let them build out the logistics and, most importantly, earn that customer trust.
It was the foundation, and the plan was always to build a skyscraper on top of it. And that long-term vision, they called it the everything store. See, the goal was never just to become the world's biggest bookstore. That was just the perfect key to unlock the door to a much grander vision. So when you really look back at it, the story of early Amazon isn't really about selling books online. It's about building a system for logistics, a system for customer service, a system for building trust, a system that was designed from day one to eventually handle, well, everything. And that really brings us to the final question, doesn't it? Lots of people have great ideas, but very, very few of them manage to build a global empire. So what's the difference? What's the secret ingredient? Well, the answer really boils down to having a system built on three things: a long-term vision, the willingness to make smart, strategic bets, and a complete, relentless obsession with the customer. That's the formula. That's what turns a small idea in a garage into a force that changes the world.
This is CorpFile, inside the world of big brands. Subscribe to explore the real stories behind the companies that shape our world.